Hey guys, how's it going? Valk here. So we just got the information drop on the live stream from the official channel, the review for aespa Winter as well as Ningning and a bunch of other things for the patch coming in 24 hours. So without further ado, I'd just like to jump into it and kind of give you guys my first impression on these units, because I think as much as they're good units, they definitely don't power creep the game as is in its current form. So let's just go in and kind of break down how these characters fit into the game. So right out of the gate, we have aespa Winter. Her base stats are looking a little bit anemic for a very offensive character. Definitely leaves a little bit more to be desired. So she's going to need a really strong kit to kind of make up for that. So Winter's defining trait right now, it's looking like would be her passive, which gives her perma-stealth. Really strong ability. I will compare this ability to something like a Coley or Solitaria. At the very least, it's like a guiding light that procs immediately out the gate. So she's like immune to a lot of units like Assassin Sid or even Zeo that's coming out. On top of that, she's going to kind of have a pseudo green Celine passive where anytime your opponent uses a non-attacking skill, she's going to be able to refresh her ultimate and then give herself immunity and as well as a full cleanse. And with Mola investment, this is going to be a 2-turn cooldown. So scaling with her S3, I think this is a pretty serious ability. Her S3 Blackout is going to be a single target nuke as well as a stun for 2 turns. I think versus like more aggressive comps, especially like single target aggressive comps, it's going to be pretty serious if you take a character out the fight for 2 turns. In standard, I think there's too many cleanse and immunities going on for this to be too valuable. But the most important thing is she gets 50% CR, as well as if you land a critical hit, she's going to be able to deal 5,000 fixed damage. And from what I understand, this will increase by 5,000 every time she uses this ability. So by the time you're using your third one, she's going to be at 15k extra damage on top of her nuking damage. So this is pretty serious. She ever comes out in any type of fight that you're fighting against her, you have to be able to fish her out of that stealth in like 2 rotations before your cooldowns get too far. As far as I can see, she doesn't seem super OP, but is really good in matchups like versus Amelia and Destina, and into a bunch of single target units. And she seems like she'll have a harder time versus AoE as well as evasion units like Auden and ML Violet. So to me, she seems like a combination of a Coley and Green Celine. I think she'll be a solid 7 out of 10 unit if her S3 scaling can be good before the fixed damage. I think she's definitely a solid beginner unit to have for anybody who's coming into the game expecting to play with these aespa units. She's a really safe unit, and I think she's going to be able to do a lot for any player. As far as her artifact goes, the armament, to me, this just kind of seems like a thief version of Dignus Orb, which is Vivian's artifact. I think it'll be okay on her, but I don't think this is going to be anybody's main go-to as the Winter artifact. I think Winter herself probably uses Secret Art Storm Sword, which is Green Celine's artifact, and I think it'll make her way more potent versus like, for example, like an Amelia or a Destina in a standard versus standard setting. Next up is Ningning. She looks like to be a offensive support. And as far as like her, speed contesting potential goes, she's 1 base speed slower than Flan. So it's pretty considerable, but definitely not within the fastest of characters. I think her most defining trait is going to be her S3, which seems to be a more offensive version of DJB's barrier inversion skill, which turns all barrier into damage. And on top of that, she dispels 2 debuffs before increasing combat readiness by 40%, and if she inverts a barrier, this is going to be 80%. So what this is going to do is let her essentially give her a really natural way to cleave into FCC as well as SC Arrowwell, right? Because you're going to be able to invert all of her barriers, and then on top of that, you're going to be able to strip that pesky escort buff, which is just such a huge problem, especially for like cleave in the modern meta. Her S2 is also really neat, so if you can actually chain her turn back, What she's going to be able to do with this is actually CR push and bypass any trigger units like, for example, Green Celine or even aespa Winter, right? So now you won't be activating all of these really pesky units with a non-attacking skill, and on top of that, it's also going to give an attack up as well. So kind of like a Guider Aether in that sense. So I think what this does is it lets her very comfortably replace Flan in those Rand Caesarea comp. She just doesn't have the stabilizing potential of like a Desert Jewel Basar pick. I think she combos pretty intuitively into Cleave, and she's not so fast that she'll be very oppressive to anti-Cleave. So overall, I think this is like a pretty solid unit as well. But for new players, I think she's too much of like a combo setup to really be value. Like if you just really like the character, go ahead and pull her, but I would say don't expect to be playing her until you're very deep into PvP and you got a good amount of speed gear to play with her. As far as her artifact goes, ED Gadget, I think if you're looking to play Ningning as a cleave initiator, the extra 20% combat readiness is going to be so important to combo with her S3, which is going to be 40% push, double to 80%. So if you have a max copy, you'll actually perfectly cycle yourself back to 100%, which I think is super important if you're looking to cleave with her. Now, if you're looking to just kind of grab a copy of the artifact, what I do think is that this is a really good Elena artifact as far as anti-cleave goes, because removing 20 souls on a really long cooldown just tells me all of the value is like front-loaded to kind of trade out a Taga Hell's Ancient Book, and on somebody like Elena, you know, if you're swapping out for like a Magaraha's Tome, instead of 30%, you're getting 20%, and you're also neutralizing a Taga Hell's Ancient Book. So I actually think the artifact is pretty solid. I myself am probably going to powder shop a copy. So on top of that, we'll also be getting POS as an artifact for the aespa side story. I think for PvP players, this is like nothing to write home about, but if you're a newer player, I think this is an excellent artifact because this is going to be stacking a lot of stats. That's just going to be a lot of value over the course of a long PvE fight. So for new players, I definitely say this is like great value. You know, pick it up and then just kind of use it as a crutch to get through a lot of more difficult PvE content. So with that will be all of the aespa units as well as the artifact we'll be getting from this patch. Now we still have Zio as well as the new exclusive equipments to look at. I know that's something I skipped last time because I was sick, so you know, we'll go into it just a little bit to kind of explain my thoughts on Zio, especially now that we've seen some of his damage numbers. As far as base stats go, Zio is going to have the same base stats as Ida. It's not super spectacular in terms of speed or bulk, but it is pretty good in terms of damage, because it does have quite high attack as well as a starting crit chance. Zio's defining trait is obviously going to be his passive, which gives him 20 combat readiness at the beginning of battle at max mola. This means if you go 265 speed, he is going to be guaranteed to be taking the first turn unless you're playing against literally the fastest player in the game. Now, Zio has some of the most loaded kit I've ever seen in a hero. This S3 is designed in a way where it activates almost no combo, aggro, or cleave units. I think the only way that is possible is if you somehow just stack attack speed on your right side and you try to fish for a target where you can use this to activate a closer Charles. That is the only scenario I think you can cleave with them. Otherwise, I think you just use this to beat down a unit, and then he just kind of becomes a very, very terrifying bruiser, right? Especially with this Deify unique buff, essentially giving him 50 crit chance as well as half damage taken, which essentially doubles both his HP and his defense, if you think about it that way. And I think this is an absolute bonkers buff. It makes him insanely stat efficient. On top of that, we just got the data mine. So his S1 is actually going to be about 1.7 scaling. So it's going to be 1.1 by 1 or 1.0 by 1 scaling. which is pretty normal for an S1, but there's also going to be an extra attack that gives him 50% CR as well as 50% damage pen at 0.7 by 1. So combined, this is approximately 1.7 by 1 scaling. So if you want to think about it, this would be like a Rimuru S2 equivalent of damage. So I think this is actually quite significant because this lets standard teams essentially play a really, really high value, high stat efficient single target bruiser that is also anti-cleave. I think his kit is a little too loaded, and the more I find out about his kit, the more I just think he's a high tier character. He's almost guaranteed to be A tier, like playstyle defining, and I think if he's any better than I think he already is, that is an easy S tier where he can define his own meta. So hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I do think he's looking to be really, really, really strong. And I think for any player, if you're not as long as you have the resources, this seems like a hero that you should pick up and just kind of keep in your back pocket for almost any account. Okay, beyond that, we also have three exclusive equipment dropping this patch. They'll be for Fire Haste, Bomb Model Kana, as well as Assassin Sid. So let's just kind of go down in order. All three of these effects don't do that much as far as PvP is concerned, but they help him out a little bit in PvE, as well as give him 12 crit chance. So it makes Fire Haste in a PvP setting a little bit easier to build without kind of overloading his kit with anything he, doesn't really need. So I think overall it gives him a small boost. Kind of helps out a little bit, and for those like PvE situations where he'll be able to see some play in, it just makes him a bit more efficient. As far as Bomb Model Kana goes, 16 effectiveness, that's right? Not too powerful, but the effects seem all very PvE oriented, where Bomb Model Kana is kind of one of the better units for the Earth Expedition, and it's just going to make her more efficient there. And for me personally, I don't use her, but if I did, I'd probably take effect number 2. Last but not least, we have Assassin Sid. So now, when this was revealed in Twitch chat on the official stream, I think people were a little bit confused. Some people were saying he doesn't need an EE, and some people were saying, why give him effectiveness? It's kind of useless. Well, you put 1 and 1 together. He doesn't really need an EE, but because I'm pretty sure Smaugate wants to keep him leveled because he has a similar role to play in PvP as somebody like Zio. They want to make sure Zio doesn't power creep him too hard. So if you look at skill 3 or effect number 3, right, it's going to give him 1 buff strip before his skill applies. So it's going to let him go through those pesky immunity blue flans that are trying to set up cleaves. So I do think this effect is going to be pretty nice, and it kind of, makes it so that if you don't have Zio, Sid can still get the job done. And I think the other notable effect would be his skill 2. So the greater attack buff makes it so that if you played him back in the day as a single target follow-up nuker for a single target opener nuke, right? What this does is it lets him essentially CR push himself with a greater attack up and then nuke somebody else, and you can kind of keep that chain going. So I think it definitely opens his build up to way more options, and I think it's pretty healthy. So overall, that is going to be the patch that is dropping tomorrow. Let me know what you guys think. That is just me breaking down a lot of these new content we'll be getting. I'm definitely excited to see the units. I'm glad Smaugate didn't decide to like completely power creep the aespa units and just straight up break the game. So God bless for that. Hopefully I'm not speaking too early when the other units are dropping for the aespa collab. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys think I missed something, or if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you thought it was helpful, go ahead and give me a like as well as a subscribe if you want to see my analysis as well as my first impression for the next batch of units. But for now, that's the video from me for today, and I hope to see you guys in the next one, and I hope you guys have a great one and stay safe out there. See ya.